Reform UK. Well, it is truly an honour to stand here before so many fake Reform members. There must be 1,000 of you here. And according to Kemi, you are nothing more than a figment of Nigel's imagination. Well, we're on a roll, aren't we? One extraordinary year it has been. A year ago, Nigel Farage was enjoying his retirement. Reform was sitting on 8% in the polls, albeit climbing fast under Richard's brilliant leadership. Rishi Sunak was still watching the boats penetrate our borders daily, choosing to do nothing. A year on, Reform is talk not just of the UK, but of the Western world. We've captured the hearts and the imaginations of millions to whom we offer hope. We've opened over 400 branches across the country. We've risen to 23% on the average of the polls. And ladies and gentlemen, Nigel Farage is now the bookmakers' favourite to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Wasn't it an unforgettable Christmas period? Over 46,000 people joined Reform in the last 2 weeks of December alone. Just think about that. Just think about that for a moment. That is the equivalent of 1/3 of the entire membership of the Tory party. A party which has been around for 190 years, joining Reform in just 2 weeks. Something is happening in the United Kingdom, and it is giving hope to millions across the country. But I'll tell you who didn't have a great festive period. Someone's paying attention. Someone who didn't exactly cover themselves in glory. That's right, the leader of the opposition. Inexplicably, she made the unwise decision to accuse us of faking our membership numbers. You know, she keeps calling herself an engineer. Perhaps she is, in the same way Rachel Reeves is an economist. And Keir Starmer is the son of a toolmaker. Well, she's not a very good one, because she claimed that our ticker was fake. And that she knew this because she was, and I quote, monitoring the back end. Well, I'm afraid, as has now been widely reported by reputable journalists, the only back end Kemi had been monitoring is the one that she was talking out of. It had to be done. But you know, we should in fact be very grateful to the leader of the Tory party, for in the preceding 24 hours of her ill-advised outburst, Reform UK signed up more new members than in any 24-hour period in our history. So let's give Kemi a big Reform round of applause. But on a serious note, we are gathered here because we know in our hearts that the country we love is in trouble. We live in a country which somehow, despite spending £54 billion a year on defence, the number of military-aged males that have entered the UK illegally via small boats now exceeds the total available soldiers to the British Army. Most are from Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. The Tories, and now Labour, have voluntarily inflicted a national security emergency on this country. But change is coming. I want you to take a moment to visualize what a triumphant day it will be when in just a few years' time, Prime Minister Nigel Farage arrives at number 10 Downing Street. In his first act as Prime Minister, he will pick up the phone to the First Sea Lord and order His Majesty's Royal Navy to see to it that not a single unauthorized vessel crossing the English Channel makes it to the shores of the United Kingdom. Now, I know it's procedure to go via the Minister of Defence, but I think Nigel should make that call himself, don't you? Our Navy will embark on a humanitarian mission to pick up those attempting this hazardous journey, ensuring nobody is harmed and that they will be taken back to France for their own safety. Under a reform government, we will leave the ECHR and replace it with a British Bill of Rights. We will pass legislation making it compulsory that anybody who comes here illegally not only will never be given the right to remain, but will be deported back to the country from which they came. If your first act upon coming to this country is to break British laws, instead of being given free accommodation and phones, you will be removed promptly and efficiently. And just for those in the BBC Verify team watching, no foreign court will stop us, because Britain will finally have a Prime Minister who will ensure that the interests of the British people come first. A reform government will also do something that Labour refused to do and the Tories failed to do in their 14 years in government. We will ensure a full, independent national inquiry into the appalling crimes of the grooming gangs that have terrorised young girls in this country for decades. It will leave no stone unturned to ensure justice for the victims and their families. It will ensure that the monstrous perpetrators and the officials who enabled them by turning a blind eye are brought to justice and are made to pay a heavy price for their crimes. We will do the things necessary to heal this country because we're the only ones who can. Now, I've made a few jokes at their expense today, but it's no surprise that the likes of the Tories, Labour, the left-wing media look at reform's progress and think it must be fake. All their prior experience means that the level of cognitive dissonance fries their brains. All they've ever known is incompetence, division, defeatism, cynicism, self-serving corruption, resignation to manage decline. So when they're confronted with people like you, ladies and gentlemen, and people like us, when they're confronted with the Reform Party that is highly competent, that is patriotic, that is fast-moving and growing at explosive rates, they quite literally cannot believe their eyes. And I have another message for them. If you think Reform's membership growth is explosive, Wait until you see what a reform government will do to the British economy and real wages for British people. It is going to be something to behold. Now, one of the most powerful drivers behind reform's momentum is how united we all are behind Nigel. Meanwhile, the Tories, they've had 5 leaders in 6 years. It's no surprise that Tory leaders are so weak and transient. They have to spend the majority of their cognitive capacity watching their own backs. Here at Reform, Nigel and the rest of our brilliant MPs and our team can focus all of our energies, 100% of our capacity, building a movement to make the United Kingdom a poised, prosperous and powerful country again. Because British people should be among the most prosperous in the world. Instead, we languish 26th in the world in terms of real GDP per person, real income per person. Even though we have so much going for us. 3 of the top 20 universities in the world are here. A large number of the world's finest engineers are here. And if you're in any doubt about that, just go and look at the offices of DeepMind, or look around the Dyson Institute, or the factory making Rolls-Royce aerospace engines and cutting-edge nuclear modular reactors. We have a leading position in the world in financial services, and we have the best possible time zone. And as someone who built a successful business here, I can tell you, the British people are full of talent, full of energy and dynamism. And despite successive governments' best efforts, the world's brightest and best continue to fall over themselves wanting to come here. Yet for them, we make it impossible. Sadly, it's actually much easier for a convicted murderer to get into the United Kingdom than it is for a Nobel laureate. So why is it that the British people get poorer every year in real terms? It's down to the appallingly incompetent and Britain-hating political leadership this country has endured for decades. There's the religious cult of net zero, an appalling theft of hard-working British people's jobs and money, all to fund the growth of China and the egos of champagne socialists. Speaking of which, I have a question for Boris Johnson and Ed Miliband. If renewables are so cheap, why have British people been forced to subsidise renewables to the tune of £90 billion over the last decade? That is £300 per household per year extra that they have had to pay in their energy bills out of their post-tax pay while they struggle to make ends meet. All to enrich renewable corporate shareholders. And given all they did was offshore the emissions to China and India, they did nothing to make the world cleaner. Make no mistake, this is one of the greatest heists on the British people of all time, and reform will bring it to an end. Then there's a bureaucratic state, which has ballooned to an insane size. 500,000 people are now employed in the civil service, many of whom get to work from home, all being paid on your dime. In the last 7 years, their burden on the taxpayer has rocketed by 50% to £15 billion. Well, I have some news for them. In the age of AI, with competent leadership, there's no reason that couldn't be cut in half and still deliver a vastly superior service to the British people. But the problem of the bureaucratic state is much more pernicious than that. They act as a suffocating parasite, feasting on the dynamism and hard work of the British people. We have far too many regulations, far too many regulators, and nowhere near enough builders. And that is why, when Reform are in government, we will demolish the unelected, unaccountable quangos and unleash the tidal wave of potential in the British people. The reality is the two old parties have spent decades creating these problems. Labour, Conservatives, it hasn't made any difference. That's why reform is necessary. That is why reform has broken through with such breathless pace. Because in reform, British people see a real alternative. They see history being made in real time. The stranglehold that the two old parties have had on the politics of this country for a century is finally being broken. And you know, it is you, ladies and gentlemen, it is you who are responsible for that. And generations to come will owe you a debt of gratitude. Nigel gave his New Year's message from Blenheim Palace, famous for being the birthplace of Mr. Winston Churchill. Now, this is a man whose legacy has come under assault in recent years. People calling themselves teachers have sought to rewrite history and tarnish the legacy of one of the greatest Britons ever to have lived. But their efforts are in vain, for his spirit lives on. It lives on in the people in this room, those watching at home, the millions of reform supporters across the country who know in their hearts that the time has come for them to stand up and be counted in their country's hour of need. Because at Reform we see a future in which the United Kingdom, instead of being ritually humiliated, celebrates triumph after triumph. One in which national pride radiates through the kingdom because our people achieve astonishing feats in architecture, engineering, literature, medicine, and all aspects of human achievement. One in which families are bonded together and communities thrive. One in which young people feel proud and fortunate to be a part. And that is what Reform will deliver. This is why people are joining us in such droves. Now, we're 8 days away from the 6-month anniversary from when Nigel appointed me chairman of Reform UK. We've achieved a great deal together. Our membership has grown by 146%, from 68,000 to 167,000. 168,000 is the latest number. We've gone from 0 branches in the UK to over 400 branches across the country. They're doing incredible work. We've gone from 14% of the vote share in the election in July to 23% in the average of the polls. And let me tell you this, in case anyone thinks we're in the mood to slow down. Nope, we are just getting started. Now, it's a truism in life that momentum and trajectory are far more important than absolute position. It's true in business, and it's certainly true in politics. And thanks to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, Reform has all of the momentum in British politics. But make no mistake, we still have a huge amount of work to do. And that's why we need your help. We need you to stand for us as candidates, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, there in the lobby, you'll see members of our team and reform councillors whom you can discuss becoming a candidate. You can make a huge difference at a local level in this country. We also need you to volunteer and to knock on doors and to campaign for reform. Will you do that for us? Well then, I will leave you with this. Hot off the press today is a new MRP poll which shows that if an election were held today, Reform would win 120 seats, closer than ever to overtaking the Tories on 157. Just think about that. We've gone from 5 seats 6 months ago to polling at 120 seats, and we've done it in 6 months. Imagine where we can be in a year, and by the time of the general election. If we work hard, the sky is the limit as to what we can achieve together. We will elect Nigel Farage as our Prime Minister. We will turn this country around and restore the United Kingdom to its rightful position as one of the greatest countries in the world. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.